Hello again everyone, and thanks very much for joining the Azure 101 mini-series again. In our last video, we were beginning to look at the cloud adoption framework and considering the strategy phase. In today's session, however, we're looking at the planning phase in a bit more detail. So Gina, did you want to actually kickstart things off this time by taking us through the planning phase of CAF, or Cloud Adoption Framework?
Yeah, thanks Sam. So this stage is great for an organisation as it will add context to the migration. So the organisation will get to assess their digital estate and plan what they are migrating, and most importantly, how they are migrating it. So to do this, they will need to create a clear inventory of current assets and understand what they are migrating before it happens. So this is often the first way savings are recognised, because you will avoid migrating unnecessary assets and adding costs to your subscriptions. The great news here is that you can use a tool from Microsoft called Azure Migrate. This is an agent that sits on your server, whether on-premise, in another data center, or even with another cloud provider. If we take a quick look at the Microsoft Learn details here for a second, we can see that the agent requires specific Windows versions to run the appliance, as well as specific RAM, CPU, and disks. However, don't panic if you don't have the latest Windows version. For example, this tool can also be used widely for a Hyper-V host, which is running Windows Server 2022, 2019, or 2016. So Sam, what should organisations look to include when evaluating their current workloads?
Great question, Gina. There are actually several points an organisation will consider. So this might be things like, what does the workload currently do? Are they even still needed? What hardware is being used? And how much does that hardware cost? And this everything in the cost, including engineer time, maybe even electricity costs. What SLAs do they have? And is a workload a priority to the actual organisation? Now, if you're anything like me, you may be asking yourself, why do we even need to know, for example, the electricity costs? Why do we need to consider them? Now, that's actually because understanding and planning your migration to Azure involves assessing all of the costs, not just certain ones. So, for example, if your current server costs maybe £20,000, but Azure costs maybe £30,000 to achieve the same result, migration would probably not be your first option. You'd be thinking, it's not for me. However, if we now said the server is 20,000, the electricity per year is 10,000, and maybe the extra hardware needs for things like backup and disaster recovery are 25,000, suddenly Azure is looking a little bit more exciting to actually reduce not just your costs, but also your management overheads as well. Now, the good news is that Microsoft provides you with two other great tools, and free tools at that, to compare your on-premise spend and then also look at the costs for your Azure resources as well. And these are the total cost of ownership calculator and also the pricing calculator. Now, if you want to see these in a bit more detail, there is a separate video which we've done, and we'll show and explain these two portals for you.
Thanks Sam, so worth checking out that video for a closer look on those tools. So now you understand your workloads and the costs and size of the assets, you can then start planning your migration. So you will need to rationalise your workloads to help make the decisions on what will happen to them by identifying the top 5 workloads and their dependencies.
Yeah, that's right, Gina. However, as there's actually 5 different types of rationalisation you can do here, CAF once again helps us where you can get suggestions. You can also get an initial filter for the types of rationalisation that you need to do, which is known as incremental rationalisation. So for example, instead of asking, should this workload be rehosted, replaced, re-architected, rebuilt, or even refactored, we just say, is this workload being rehosted or replaced? Nice and simple.
Yeah, and that's a really great approach because it prevents wasting time on workloads that won't be migrated to the cloud or need re-architecting or refactoring the code. So, however, the thing to remember here is that you can do more rationalising later in the process to validate decisions or learn from learned lessons. This is actually covered in the documentation, so if you are at this stage, do go and check it out.
Yeah, I agree. The documentation here is actually a really good tool at this stage to help you make sense of the process, as it's helped us several times as we help to support Azure clients. Now, as mentioned before, because you're filtering your decisions, you'll likely find that the workloads you don't need are the first things to be dropped, and as such, they're the first cost benefit of cloud migration that are recognised once you've actually done that migration. So that's it for this video, where we explored the plan phase of the cloud adoption framework. We have now seen how the strategy provides for the why for cloud, the plan provides for the what of adopting Azure, but it also provides each arm of your organization the opportunity to understand their role and impact within the cloud adoption deployment. Next time we're going to look at the Azure landing zones, which are the bedrock of the ready phase of CAF. So until next time, it's goodbye from us. Goodbye.
Thanks, bye.